Hi, everyone. I'm CBS 19 Chief Meteorologist Brett Anthony here with Northeast Texas Congressman Nathaniel Moran. Congressman Moran, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
My pleasure, Brett. Thanks for having me.
So you have introduced the Rural Weather Systems Monitoring Act. This is the second time that you've introduced it right into Congress.
That's right. We introduced this act the last session, and this session reintroduced it because of the importance to continue to focus on the need to fill those gaps in rural America where monitoring systems are not where they need to be, and to make sure that our folks here in East Texas are protected, have prior warning, and can be safe during severe storms.
When we see this name, Rural Weather Systems Monitoring, I mean, that's a lot of words, but essentially, what does it mean? What are we covering? What gap are we filling?
Well, the big gap that we're talking about here in East Texas, which is the reason and the foundation for pushing this bill forward, is because we're in a radar gap. As you know, we've got one in Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we've got one in Shreveport. But here in East Texas in the middle, because of the curvature of the earth and because those radar systems work off of direct line of sight, that curvature of the earth only allows us to see higher systems. So if you get an F2 or an F1, it's really hard to see those systems exactly and precisely where they're at and when they're developing. We want to be able to give folks an opportunity and a heads up before they get to their areas that those storms are coming. So as we looked at the need in East Texas to fill that gap, we realized that there's other rural areas in the United States that have the same gaps as well.
There's a lot of areas across the entire United States that have that. I think a prime example of what we saw was last year when Tropical Depression Barrel, which was Hurricane Barrel, came through East Texas, and there were so many quick spin-ups, low-topped thunderstorms that it seemed like radar either overshot or the National Weather Service had to really turn it up.
That's right.
To be able to see what was going on inside the storms.
That's exactly right, and that's why this bill is so important. And under this bill, the provisions actually say, once passed, the government has 120 days to do a review of rural America and to provide a report to say, here are the gaps in rural weather monitoring systems. Here is what would it take to fix those gaps. And it's the first foundation really for us to be able to come back then in an appropriations process and say, well, look, we've done this study. We know there are severe gaps here. Here's the data behind the lives that could be saved or the property that could be preserved if we fill those gaps. And so now let's move forward with a value proposition of filling those gaps with new technology and making sure that it's spread across all of America, not just urban America.
When you say new technology, are you talking about like looking into the future with there's something called phased array radar? Are we looking down the road that far, perhaps, for filling that?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a possibility. And what you do with this study is you make people aware of the need, number one, and the possible solutions, and then the cost of those solutions as we look through those, because every dollar spent is a taxpayer dollar, and we need to have return on that investment. We need to have value for that expense. But when you're talking about preservation of life, when you're talking about preservation of property and homes, that's at the top of the list for the types of expenditures we need to be making, particularly when it's probably on balance pretty low dollar for what it's going to attain.
Is there any thought or is there any possibility that a private corporation could come in with one of these small gap filler radars to perhaps fill that gap?
Yeah, certainly there is, and we would always want to look at those options. Again, it's a value proposition, but to identify those areas and to say specifically, we've done the objective scientific data, we've looked at it, and here are the biggest priority needs across America. Here are the rural areas that need it worst. Now, I think we have a serious gap that we need to fill here, but let's take a look across America and see where's the priority areas where there's lots of severe storms and lots of property and lots of need to preserve life and property.
This sounds like why Congressman Eric Sorensen got on board with this.
Yeah.
He's a Democrat from Illinois.
He is a Democrat from Illinois, but also a meteorologist and somebody that worked here in East Texas as a meteorologist. And so we were pleased to be able to work together on this. This is not a partisan issue. This is not about blue or red states. This is about again, saving lives and preserving property and just doing something that makes sense and is smart, common sense. And Eric and I quickly found common ground on this issue. issue, even though we're on opposite sides of the spectrum on a lot of different issues. We certainly want to agree on this and can agree on this, that this is something that needs to happen.
Now, someone out there might be watching going, I thought this passed the House last April.
Yeah.
It did, right? But what happened?
It did. It passed the House. So last April, we filed it in last session. It passed the House last April as part of a larger bill. The Weather Reauthorization Act of 2023 actually passed in April of 2024. Passed the House floor, got stuck in the Senate, didn't go anywhere. So we're still back around to where we need to be on reauthorizing a number of National Weather Service issues. This is a piece of that, but we didn't want just that piece that had been included in the larger bill last session to get lost this session. So we wanted to make sure that we did a standalone bill and make sure everybody understood how important this is. We filed this a couple weeks ago near the end of June as a reminder to the Science and Space Technology Committee that this is really important to us, that we want to see it handled. We think that it's going to be included, and it has been included so far in the reauthorization of the bigger bill as well. And we're going to continue to press until it gets passed and signed into law.
What's the bigger bill?
Well, the bigger bill is that Weather Reauthorization Act of 2023. It's
still in work.
It's still going back to 2023. I know it sounds odd.
Yeah.
But it should have been reauthorized in 2023, and that actually drug into 2024, which is when our bill got included and then passed the House, got stuck in the Senate. Now we're back for round two. As you can imagine, things move slow in Washington, D.C., but we're not going to stop until we get it continued either passage in the bigger bill or as a standalone bill that we refiled in June.
You may have already mentioned this. You said now 120 days for that research to be done to look at the costs and everything?
That's right. 120-day period. We think that 4 months is adequate time to be able to look at that situation. There's lots of data out there and determine where those gaps are within the rural confines of America, and then to determine, well, how could we fill those gaps? And what systems might we use to do that, and how could we warn people better?
Have you talked about any of those systems? When you say those systems, I mean, I've talked about privatized radar, or is that essentially what we're talking about when we're talking about systems?
Well, we, of course, we're aware of some of the systems that are out there, but quite frankly, we want the experts in this area to look at this from a national weather standpoint and to say, we've looked at all of the systems, and I'm not a meteorologist, I'm not a weather guy, but I can identify the need, and I see the need out there. What we want to do is see a detailed report and a plan come back after a detailed study. That's a scientific study and an objective study based on data and scientific analysis to say, here are the areas where we're missing some monitoring systems, and here are the best systems available today, or potentially here's what's to come in the next year or two that we might be able to use to fill that gap.
So the deadline looks like it's October to see the ball rolling toward maybe getting the bill passing.
We'll see, because likely this bill, the Weather Reauthorization Act of 2023, which is now in 2025, that has our bill, probably won't get taken up until after the appropriations process. That would be the typical way it would be handled, sometime in the fall or late fall. And I would like to see that happen before the end of the year. I think it'd be a bill that's very worthy of passage.
I know it's a touchy subject. We're coming out of this tragedy in the Hill Country, and a lot of folks are saying, well, how could we prevent this in the future? This wouldn't necessarily prevent something like that, though, would it?
No, and the tragedy that unfolded in Central Texas is just horrific. I just can't even not even imagine what those parents are going through right now. This bill really is looking for those systems that would create tornadoes, and those systems that would be lower level systems that we couldn't see. And I know that Central Texas is dealing with a lot of questions right now, but our focus really is on standing firm to support the parents and the recovery effort during this time, and supporting those families and that area during the grief and the sorrow that they're going through right now. And we'll move on to other things later, but right now that's where we are.
It is always a challenge when it comes to weather and the weather enterprise of communicating those threats, whether it's tornadoes, flash floods, even dense fog sometimes can be a tough threat to get folks to act on. Yeah,
it's both an art and a science, as you know, and what we want to be able to do is to provide as many tools as possible at a value to the taxpayers that will provide the results that citizens need that will preserve both life and property in these low Earth systems that we can't see when the radars are so spread out. And that's the way it is. As you pointed out, some of these low-level systems that come through, you just don't see them with great enough detail for you to be able to tell those that are watching, here's what's going on the ground level because of that curvature of the Earth. And so we really want to fill those gaps.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about, you talked about curvature of the Earth, a storm that's or a radar beam that's 6,000 or 7,000 feet off the surface. It doesn't see what's happening down at ground level. We rely so much on ground truth, what someone's seeing at times. So, and particularly in some of those areas, I would think the most volatile areas would be coming out of East Texas, maybe southern Rusk County, maybe northern Nacogdoches County, even here into Smith County, southeastern Smith County, because we've got to be, I think the radar beam here is about 6,000 or 7,000 feet off the ground when it reaches here.
Yeah, it's tough all across East Texas, and I've had folks in Mount Vernon and in Dangerfield and everywhere in between mention this issue to me as a very important issue to them because they are, like us, kind of caught between this Shreveport and Fort Worth radar system, and those systems that run through there. It's really important if we can give another minute, 2, 3, 4 minutes to prepare a little bit of warning for folks so that they know the storm is coming and how it's coming, gives them an opportunity to prepare and to hunker down and to make sure that they stay safe as the storm passes through.
Yeah, lead time is so important.
Very important.
Yeah, I know from when I started in weather, lead time used to be minus 30 seconds, and now we're up to about 15 minutes on the plus side of things.
That's right.
And imagine what it could be if we could get some sort of coverage here.
The longer lead time we give to folks, the better chance they have to avoid life-ending injuries or severe damage to property.
All right, so what's next then? Where do we go from here?
Yeah, next we need to make sure that the committee takes this bill up. We're continuing to talk to leadership about our standalone bill, not just the larger committee bill, but the standalone bill, because regardless of what happens with this Weather Reauthorization Act of 2023, which includes our bill in it, we want our separate bill to move forward because it's vitally important and would create a real positive impact here in East Texas.
Congressman Nathaniel Moran, thank you for your time this afternoon.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.